Good morning, everyone. My name is Becky2a, and I am a Communications and Governance Team Leader within the Shropshire County Pension Fund, and also apparently the GDPR expert. I don't feel like I'm living up to those expectations, but I've got two short presentations to give you this morning. The first being on the new General Data Protection Regulations. I've been tasked within the fund to look at this new set of regulations and make sure the fund is compliant by the implementation date of May next year. So I'm not an expert, but I'm hoping to give you an insight onto what we feel are some of the changes to the regulations which are coming in, and then also some of the actions that we're taking, so the project that we have in place, and also, as you've heard a lot this morning, there's a big exchange of data between yourselves and us as the fund. So GDPR needs to consider that and have a think about any implications with regards to the new regulations coming in next May. So what is GDPR? So the full term is General Data Protection Regulations. They are it's a new piece of legislation coming in, as I said, on the 25th of May next year. It's actually under European Parliament, and I'll talk about the impact of Brexit in a moment, but it's a set of regulations to replace the current Data Protection Act. So hopefully, as colleagues and individuals working for an organisation in the UK, we are all compliant, we'll have to be compliant with the Data Protection Act 1998. What GDPR is going to introduce is a similar set of principles. So if we all are currently compliant with Data Protection Act, hopefully the new GDPR regulations shouldn't be too dissimilar to what we're all doing now, assuming we are all compliant, that is. Just what GDPR does is places greater emphasis on the documentation of data controllers. So if you're a data controller, you're having to hold and process data. And so what GDPR does is place greater emphasis on the records that we have to keep and how we keep data. And basically, as all new legislation does, we have to demonstrate accountability to this new legislation. So it's not too far away, as I said, from the Data Protection Act, but it just means that we have to demonstrate further that we are compliant. Okay, Brexit. I mentioned the European Parliament, and these the GDPR regulations are coming in under the EU regs. Brexit, so does it mean with us leaving the EU, does it still apply? Well, in a short answer, yes, it still does. The Information Commissioner's Office is supporting this new piece of legislation, and it will come into effect, as I said, May next year, which is obviously will be before we leave the European Union. And it's been said that the UK government will be transposing this new legislation into our own legislation when we do leave the EU. So unfortunately, it's not going away, and we still need to be compliant by May next year, and then continue to be compliant afterwards. Okay, so hopefully the current 8 data protection principles aren't too new to you. So there's 8 principles there, and hopefully you can see them. I'm not sure if the sun's helping. But the 8 principles is what we all have to comply with as we are handling data of EU citizens. One of the number one there, lawfulness. I won't go through them all, but just picking up on a couple. Number one, personal information must be fairly and lawfully processed. I mean, this is still moving over into GDPR, but what we're having to do is make more records to be more accountable of the information that we're holding and why we're holding it. In pensions, and we have to keep data practically forever, because we always have to calculate someone's pension benefits, and we do have to hold information basically forever. But also, anything that we are holding is still, when it comes to lawfulness, that it's in relation to what we need it for. So we're not holding anything that we shouldn't be holding because we don't need it to process someone's pension benefits. So that's currently in the regulations, the data protection regulations, and that will be going forward in the new GDPR regulations as well. One of the other principles, currently we've got data protection, is number 4, data has to be accurate. And I think you've probably sat here for the last couple of hours thinking all we do is barcode about data being accurate. So that's again going forward in the new GDPR regulations, that anything that we hold, obviously we don't want it can't not be accurate because we need to process and pay someone's pension, but in terms of data protection principles, we have to hold the correct information as well. So there's a bigger reason why, not just for the pensions point of view. Number 5, I have just touched on it, personal information must not be kept for longer than necessary. This is difficult within pensions because, as I said, we have to hold information basically forever. But there are rules when someone can come and say to us, I want you to hold this, or this piece of information. And as long as it's part of the pensions administration function that we do have to keep it. But as I said, it's a part of reviewing why we're holding something, and actually do we need to keep it. Okay, data roles within data protection, and these roles will still be here, they'll still be around when GDPR comes in next May. So we have the Information Commissioner. So this is the person who has the power to enforce the Act, so the Current Data Protection Act. So this role will still be, the Information Commissioner's office will still be around come next May. We are currently at the moment have data controllers and data processors. I would say employers in the room, you are probably data controllers, but you will probably do some data processing as well. So a data controller is a person or organisation that collects and keeps data about people. Everything that we do, a large proportion of it is because you give us data about your members. We wouldn't be able to function, we wouldn't be able to carry out our day jobs, as Cheryl and Debbie have been talking about, without all the data that you supply us. So I would say certainly you're a data controller. But also, we collect data about people. We ask members to tell us their email addresses and update their addresses. When members of staff leave you and they become a deferred member or retired member, we constantly interact with our members and they're giving us data. So the fund is a data controller and a data processor, so we've got a kind of a joint role. And you probably, in your organisations, will have a joint role, I'm assuming too. Data subject, so that's the person who has data about them stored outside their direct control. So, as I've said, GDPR comes in May next year, but interestingly what GDPR is doing is introducing the legislation to apply to data processors. So data processors are the ones who process data on behalf of the data controller. So you're giving us all your member data, all that starter information, all that pay information you've heard Cheryl talk about, and we're processing it, we're calculating someone's pension, and then we're paying them when they get to retirement. So we are certainly a data processor. What GDPR is doing, or will do, is data processors will have direct legal obligations and responsibilities, which means that data processors can be prosecuted for, they can be held liable for data breaches. Currently, under data protection, if you're a data controller, so it's your data and you collect that and you pass it on to a third party, it's only yourself as the data controller that can be fined. But with new GDPR regulations, the data processor can also be fined as well. So there's a lot of information within the new GDPR regulations, and it's impossible for me to cover it today. I didn't want to give you a GDPR training session because that's not what I'm here for as well. Hopefully, back at all your organisations, you will have an information governance officer who you will be working with, or you'll be seeking advice from whoever you get your legal advice from, to make sure your own individual organisations are compliant with GDPR. So I'm certainly not here to give you a training session and tell you what you need to do. I've just picked out a couple of things from GDPR which I think are relevant to us and our relationship as employers and the fund. So there are other things in GDPR which I may not have covered. So one of the things that is coming in, so right to access, someone can do that now. They can come to you as their employer or us as their pension fund and ask or you what information that we hold on them. So the timescale for this is changing from 40 calendar days to 30, and at the moment we can currently charge for this £10 fee. but that is changing, so that's going to be free of charge. So if someone comes to you and says, can I check what payroll records you hold on me, or check what employee information you hold on me, come May next year, you'll have to give that information to them free of charge. Currently, there is something similar to a right to be forgotten, so another new thing from GDPR, it's not badged up as that, it's within the current Data Protection Act, it's right to rectification, erasure, blocking or destruction, but under GDPR it's badged up as right to be forgotten. So individuals can ask for all their information to be removed from all systems. And again, I keep on badgering on about this, but that is very difficult for pensions admin. But what we are going to do is review what information we're holding and document when we are holding something that we know that we may not be needing at the moment, but we are using in the future. So everything we hold, we are just going to have to document. That's the reason why, if we ever got a knock on the door by the Information Commissioner. One of the other points under GDPR is privacy by design. So when you're looking at any new policies, processes within your payroll function or within your HR systems or finance, if you're collecting data and holding data, all of your systems and processes must take into account GDPR. You're probably doing that now with data protection anyway, but there is greater emphasis on that within the new GDPR regulations. And appointing a data protection officer. The fund's seeking guidance on this at the moment, because it does state in the GDPR regulations that a data protection officer must be appointed, so that's your named person as an organisation who would deal with, who would liaise with the ICA in regards to any data breaches or anything like that. But we're trying to work out whether, as a fund, we would use the Shropshire Council's DPO, so we're working with Shropshire Council closely to establish that really. Okay, and continuing on. So, fairly big change is a privacy impact, sorry, no, that's the next one. The other one is a privacy impact assessment. This is a fairly big piece of work if you're ever having to do one, is that what GDPR suggests is that for each process or change in process, you have to do a privacy impact assessment. So these are quite big processes where you are handling lots of data and you call collecting lots of data or processing lots of data. So we would have to probably do a privacy impact assessment for our annual benefit statement run every year, or submitting all of our data to our scheme actuary every 3 years. So it's looking at any big functions you do, any big exchanges of data, and actually looking at what the impact of that data transfer is. What I was just going to talk to you about before was the privacy notice. This is quite a significant one. It will be a significant piece of work for us as a fund, in the fact that we need to make sure that we have an updated notice on our website and being referred to on any of our forms or guidance, that what members' data is, where it's held, what it's used for, and whether we share it with any third parties. So you will have to have one of these as well back at your organisations. And you do see it on lots of forms now anyway, don't you? When you're filling in a form for whatever, it's how we use your data and whatnot. But going forward from next May, this will have to be, the privacy notices will have to be bumped up. They have to be more comprehensive and more clear with regards to what you're doing with someone's data. The ICA have got tons of guidance on actually how you write a privacy notice, and we're working with the LGA and taking advice to make sure that our privacy notice is exactly is clear and can be read by everyone really. Consent. So again, this is sort of in data protection at the moment, but these rules are tightened up in GDPR in the fact that consent must be proactively given. So if someone's filling out a form, they have to say that they consent to that information being shared. So it can't just be assumed that that consent is being given. Children's data is another thing under GDPR. So we deal with children with regards to paying pensions for parents that died. So we have to make sure that all of our information, including that privacy notice that I was just talking about, is written in a way that a child could understand. I'm not sure I'm ahead of how we're going to do that yet, because pensions is very technical and we do have a lot of jargon, but it's something that we have to overcome because it's there in GDPR and it says that children's data and also obviously any information you hold about children must be made clear to children, and the fact that it should be easy for them to understand. We have to probably take note on the fact that we have got overseas members, so we need to think about the impact of GDPR and how we communicate with those members, and if they've got a slightly different version because they're living in a different country. That may be, it's a bit vague at the moment how that's going to work, but particularly when Brexit happens, when we leave the EU. So non-compliance, this is why the fact that there is a huge increased fine now is creating a buzz around GDPR, because, as I said, largely GDPR and Data Protection Act are very similar. There's just a few more comprehensive rules in there, a few more tasks for us to do. But what the biggest impact of GDPR is the fact that there's now increased fines for non-compliance. So 20 million euros or 4% of turnover if greater. So that it's a huge figure, obviously. And all the documentation I've read from the ICO, we'd expect them, that would have to be for a huge breach, but nevertheless, we still will have to be compliant. So I've literally just, as I said, just touched on what our understanding of GDPR is. So our work plan at the moment is myself working with Shropshire Council as our scheme administrator, because there is overlap. Shropshire Council is our scheme administrator and therefore ultimately responsible for administering the local government pension scheme. So if there are roles within the Shropshire Council that we can use as our data protection officer and whatnot, we will use that, but it's just trying to understand the impact of that. I myself am part of a working group, part of GDPR, a national working group with other comms officers within different funds to understand the impact of GDPR on our day-to-day processing. What we're trying to do is get our head around any impact on any current processes, reviewing our contracts, because obviously we contract with our software supplier to run our pension administration system. So we're just obviously making sure from our point of view that they are compliant with GDPR. Reviewing our policies, and I'll come on to that in a moment. And what we will be doing before May next year is amending our forms, our documentation, and drafting a privacy notice. So there's lots of work there. I don't think it's huge in terms of actual what we need to do on the ground, but I think we just might need to be more aware of any forms or any way where we are collecting data from our member, that they're aware that it's under we're compliant with GDPR. Hopefully you've all heard of GDPR before today, or if you haven't, hopefully it's been an interesting just insight really. I thought I don't really want to be guiding you of what I think you should be doing, because you have your own individual employer work plan. Some of the things I thought you may want to consider is that, remember, most of the data we hold is collected by you. So you are that data controller and you're passing that data to us. You have to do that because the regulations say so. But what I would be mindful is that ensure that you tell your employees that their information will be shared with the fund. So you will have to have a privacy notice in whatever shape or form, and that privacy notice should list the fund as a statutory body that you share information with. And then I would highly recommend that you have a look at the Information Commissioner's Office website. And that's probably a terrible slide, so I do apologise if you can't see. But they've got really useful 12 steps to prepare for GDPR, and they've got a lot of guidance, but even starting off with something like this really gets in your mind what exactly you need to do. So hopefully that was interesting. As I said, I'm not an expert, but I'm learning. And I'm happy to take questions, but please bear in mind that I won't be able to tell you exactly what you need to be doing to be GDPR compliant.